This is not a drill. This is not a distant possibility. What you are witnessing is the single most volatile escalation in the Middle East this decade. Moments ago, the foundational pillars of the shadow war between Israel and Iran were vaporized in a ball of fire. Under the cover of darkness, deep within Syrian territory, a fortified command and control bunker, the nerve center for Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, was systematically erased from existence. This was no stray missile. This was a decapitation strike of unprecedented scale and audacity, executed by the most advanced aerial weapon in Israel's arsenal. Inside that bunker were some of the most powerful and experienced military commanders in the entire Iranian regime, architects of its foreign wars, masters of its proxy network. And now, they are gone. The question is no longer if Iran will respond. The question is, how devastatingly, and how soon. This single act may have just lit the fuse on a multi-front war that could consume the entire region. Welcome to Global Crisis Radar. The countdown has begun. The first reports were chaotic, emerging as fragmented whispers on encrypted channels before exploding across global intelligence agencies. A seismic event registered near Damascus. But this was no earthquake. This was man-made. At approximately 1:45 local time, Israeli F-35 Adir jets, ghosts in the night, slipped past Syrian and Russian air defense networks undetected. Their target was not a weapons depot or a militia convoy. It was a target of immense strategic value. A subterranean operations center, hardened to withstand conventional attack, known to Western intelligence as the Damascus Vault. This was the brain of Iran's operations in the Levant. From this single point, the IRGC Quds Force coordinated the flow of weapons to Hezbollah in Lebanon, directed Shia militias in Syria, and planned attacks against both Israeli and American interests across the region. Taking it out required more than just firepower. It required perfect intelligence and flawless execution. The weapon of choice: bunker-busting munitions designed to pierce dozens of feet of reinforced concrete before detonation, ensuring nothing and no one survives. The F-35s delivered their payload with pinpoint accuracy and vanished back into Israeli airspace before Syrian air defense systems even knew they were there. The result was total annihilation. Within an hour, Iranian state-controlled media, initially silent, began to issue terse, cryptic statements. They confirmed an act of Zionist aggression in Syria. Then, the names started to surface. Not foot soldiers, not mid-level officers. Generals. General Kianush Ramazani, the Quds Force commander responsible for the entire Syrian theater. A master logistician and a veteran of the Iran-Iraq War. He was the man who rebuilt Iran's network in Syria after years of civil war. Beside him, Brigadier General Ali Safavi, a top intelligence coordinator and a protege of the slain Qasem Soleimani, considered his ideological successor in the field. At least 3 other high-ranking colonels and strategic planners were also confirmed among the dead. This wasn't just cutting off a limb of the Iranian war machine. It was a direct strike at its heart and mind in the region. These men held the keys to a decade of operational knowledge, personal relationships with proxy leaders, and the intricate financial and logistical networks that fuel Iran's foreign policy. Their simultaneous removal creates a vacuum of command and a crisis of confidence at the highest levels of the Iranian regime. The initial shock in Tehran is now hardening into a cold, calculated fury. A spokesman for the IRGC delivered a statement broadcast across Iran, his voice trembling with rage. "The blood of our martyrs will not be in vain. The Zionist entity has made a strategic mistake and will pay a heavy, unforgettable price. The threat hangs in the air, thick and poisonous. But it's what they aren't saying publicly that has every government from Washington to Moscow on edge. What specific price will Israel be forced to pay? To understand the magnitude of this event, you must understand who these men were. They were not simply soldiers. They were the architects of Iran's axis of resistance. General Ramazani, in particular, was considered irreplaceable. He was a ghost, rarely photographed, but his influence was everywhere. He pioneered the use of precision-guided munitions for Hezbollah, personally overseeing the conversion of dumb rockets into a smart arsenal capable of overwhelming Israel's Iron Dome. He was the vital link between Tehran's strategic commands and the battlefield realities in Syria and Lebanon. His death severs a critical artery of command and control that will take years, if ever, to fully repair. Then there is Brigadier General Safavi, the spy master. Safavi was the IRGC's top intelligence analyst for Israeli military operations. He was responsible for gathering the intelligence used to target Israeli assets, and was believed to be the mastermind behind several foiled plots against Israeli embassies and tourists in Europe and Asia. His loss blinds a key part of Iran's intelligence apparatus at the most critical moment imaginable. This leads us to Israel's motive. Why risk a full-scale war for this single strike? The answer lies in a strategy Israeli intelligence calls the octopus doctrine. For years, Israel focused on fighting the octopus's tentacles, Hezbollah, Hamas, militias in Syria. But the doctrine, championed by recent Israeli leadership, dictates a new, far more dangerous approach. Strike the head of the octopus directly. The Israeli government is operating on the belief that a major, coordinated, multi-front attack was not just possible, but imminent. Intelligence, reportedly gathered by Mossad agents on the ground, suggested that the meeting in the Damascus vault was not a routine briefing. It was the final synchronization meeting for a massive, surprise assault on Israel. The plan allegedly involved a simultaneous barrage of thousands of rockets from Lebanon, precision drone strikes from Syria, and ground incursions by radical militias. From Israel's perspective, this was not an assassination. It was a preemptive counterattack. They believed they were striking a command center just hours before it was set to unleash hell on their northern border. They chose to roll the dice, betting that the chaos caused by decapitating the leadership would be less damaging than the attack they were planning to launch. It's a colossal gamble. A gamble that assumes Iran, now wounded and enraged, will be too disorganized to mount an even more catastrophic response. But as the dust settles over the crater in Damascus, a chilling piece of intelligence, leaked from a European security service, is beginning to circulate. The planned attack that Israel preempted may have had an even more terrifying component. The generals weren't just coordinating rockets and drones. They were reportedly finalizing the activation of dormant terror cells inside Israel itself. The strike didn't just prevent a war on the borders. It may have prevented a wave of terror within Israeli cities. This new detail changes the entire equation, painting Israel's actions not as aggression, but as a desperate act of self-preservation. And it makes Iran's inevitable response all the more unpredictable. The shockwaves from the Damascus strike hit the White House with the force of a political earthquake. This brings us to the most dangerous variable in this crisis: the unsanctioned nature of the attack. Multiple sources within the Pentagon and State Department have confirmed, off the record, that the United States was given no prior warning of this specific operation. While intelligence sharing between the U.S. and Israel is constant, an operational strike of this magnitude, targeting high-level Iranian generals and guaranteeing a major escalation, is typically coordinated at the highest levels. This time, it wasn't. Israel acted alone. This places the Biden administration in an impossible position. Publicly, they must support their closest ally in the region. The White House press secretary's statement was a masterpiece of diplomatic ambiguity. We support Israel's right to defend itself against regional threats, but behind the scenes, the fury is palpable. The strike has single-handedly jeopardized months of delicate, back-channel diplomacy aimed at de-escalating tensions with Iran. More critically, it places thousands of American troops in Iraq and Syria directly in the crosshairs of Iran's impending retaliation. Every U.S. base in the Middle East, from Al-Tanf in Syria to Al-Assad in Iraq, is now at DEFCON 2, the highest state of alert short of nuclear war. Meanwhile, in Tehran, the Supreme National Security Council has been in a closed-door emergency session with Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei for hours. The debate inside that room will determine the fate of the region. The hardliners, the IRGC brass, are demanding blood. They are calling for an immediate, overwhelming response to restore what they call shattered deterrence. They argue that anything less than a direct, overt attack on a significant Israeli military or strategic target would be seen as a sign of weakness, inviting further attacks. The pragmatists, led by figures in the foreign ministry, are urging caution. They warn that a direct war with Israel would inevitably draw in the United States, leading to the potential collapse of the Iranian economy and regime. They advocate for a more calculated, asymmetric response, unleashing their proxies, disrupting shipping in the Strait of Hormuz, launching a global cyber attack. A response that punishes Israel severely but stays just below the threshold of all-out war. The entire world is watching this internal struggle. The Russian Foreign Ministry has condemned the Israeli strike as a provocation that violates Syrian sovereignty. China is calling for restraint from all sides. The Sunni Arab states, like Saudi Arabia and the UAE, are publicly silent but privately terrified of being caught in the crossfire of a Shia-Jewish regional war. But just as the world waits for Iran's decision, A deeply disturbing whisper emerges from a source with contacts inside the IRGC. The debate is not just between a massive strike and an asymmetric one. A third, far more terrifying option is on the table. They are reportedly debating the activation of a contingency plan codenamed Protocol Ghadar. This is not a plan for a single retaliatory strike. It is a pre-authorized, cascading battle plan for a simultaneous, all-out war against Israel and U.S. interests on every conceivable front. It is Iran's doomsday protocol. The question is no longer just how they will respond, but whether they will choose to burn down the entire region in the process. The world is now officially on a war footing. The emergency session of the UN Security Council devolved into a shouting match between the US, Russian, and Iranian ambassadors, achieving nothing. Global markets are in freefall. The price of oil has skyrocketed, threatening to trigger a global recession as fears mount over the potential closure of the Strait of Hormuz, the choke point for nearly a third of the world's seaborne oil. This is no longer a distant conflict. Its economic consequences are now being felt in every household on the planet. Militarily, the pieces are moving into their final positions. Satellite imagery from Maxar Technologies confirms significant activity at Iranian missile bases near Kermanshah and Tabriz. Covers are being removed from ballistic missile silos. Mobile launchers are being dispersed from their garrisons to hide in the Zagros Mountains, making them harder to target in a potential preemptive strike by the U.S. or Israel. In response, the USS Eisenhower Carrier Strike Group, already in the Persian Gulf, has moved to a forward-deployed position, its F/A-18 Super Hornets conducting 24/7 combat air patrols. In Israel, civilian flights are being rerouted away from the northern border, and the Iron Dome, David's Sling, and Arrow air defense systems are at their highest state of readiness in history. The nation is a coiled spring, bracing for impact. We are now facing three catastrophic scenarios, any one of which could unfold in the next 24 to 48 hours. Scenario 1. The direct response. Iran launches a massive salvo of precision-guided ballistic missiles and suicide drones directly from Iranian territory, targeting high-value military sites inside Israel air bases, intelligence headquarters, and possibly even the nuclear facility at Dimona. This would be an unambiguous act of war, crossing a red line that would guarantee an overwhelming Israeli and likely American counterattack on Iran itself. Scenario 2. The proxy inferno. Iran chooses to keep its own territory out of the fight, instead giving the green light to its most powerful proxy, Hezbollah. Hassan Nasrallah would unleash his full arsenal of over 150,000 rockets and missiles on Israeli cities, triggering a ground war in Lebanon more devastating than anything seen in 2006. Simultaneously, militias in Syria and Iraq would launch drone and rocket attacks on U.S. forces, attempting to overwhelm their defenses. Scenario 3. Protocol Ghadar, the multi-front chaos. This is the nightmare scenario. Iran executes both options at once. A direct missile strike from Iran combined with a full-scale assault by Hezbollah and other proxies, and widespread attacks on shipping in the Persian Gulf. This would be a desperate, all-in gamble, designed to create so much chaos on so many fronts that Israel and the United States' military superiority would be diluted and overwhelmed. This is the path to a regional conflagration that could last for years and cost hundreds of thousands of lives. Israel's audacious strike on the Damascus Vault was a calculated risk, born from the belief that inaction was the greater danger. They struck the head of the octopus, hoping to paralyze it, but they may have instead enraged a dying beast and provoked it into a final, suicidal rampage. The decisions made in Tehran in the coming hours will not be based on logic alone, but on a potent and volatile mix of revolutionary ideology, national pride, and a desperate thirst for revenge. The final spark has been struck. The inferno is coming. The only question left is how much of the world it will burn. Stay tuned to Global Crisis Radar. We will be providing live, continuous coverage as events unfold. The stakes have never been higher. Make sure you are subscribed and have notifications turned on. Your access to accurate, up-to-the-minute information is now more critical than ever.